Okay, now we come to what I'm gonna call the best of the sequels, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which I watched and then read the novella of. This is the second of Planet of the Apes omnibi. Contains Conquest. Then we'll go on to Battle for, and then they threw in Planet of the Apes, the 2001 reimagining movie. So that kind of this will end the practical effects 8 movies. After this, they've all been digital movies. So I'm not going to talk about those at all. Okay, so Conquest of we're continuing right on with the next with year by year. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes came out in 1972. It was directed by J. Lee Thompson, who had directed The Guns of Navarone and Cape Fear in 61 and 62 respectively. Those were his big movies. He had wanted to be involved in the Planet of the Apes franchise. He originally was offered the first movie and was not able to do it because of scheduling conflicts. And he's a very good director. His career is kind of rocky. When you look at everything. He directed McKenna's Gold, which is a famous Western, well-known Western. By the end he's directing Death Wish 4, and he directed a strange movie called The White Buffalo, which is good. It's kind of a failed masterpiece. It's an attempt to adapt Moby Dick as a Western. Charles Bronson is a Ahab-like character trying to hunt this white buffalo, which has been tasking him and heaping him. Anyway, there's a lot to say about this movie. One thing is we're really coming into the implied theme of one of the implied themes of the movie, of time travel and whether the future is inevitable or not, or whether the future can be changed, which is kind of a growing theme. There's some arguments each way in this. It's a beautifully shot movie. Again, only like 90 minutes. I think this one's even only like 88 minutes or something. Let me check here. They're very short films. It picks up right after where Escape from the Planet of the Apes. It picks up 20 years after Escape from the Planet of the Apes, when the baby ape Milo has survived and has been raised by the circus master, played again by Ricardo Montalban. 20 years later, so he's a young adult. He's played by Roddy McDowall, who also played this character's father, Cornelius, in the first 3 movies, in the first and third movie. He wasn't available for the second movie to act in that. So he's been raised on Earth, knowing his parents were killed by the humans, by a kind Ricardo Montalban, who's been taught him to read and write and everything. It starts out Montalban. That's not his character's name. Maybe I should use his character's name. Who cares? It was 88 minutes. Brings him to the city, 1991. He feels it's time that Milo, baby Milo, who he has renamed Caesar, this ape from the future, from whose parents are from the future, should know about the greater world. It doesn't go very well. They get in a fight. Caesar's very appalled by the way the apes are treated. This is the time period after cats and dogs have all succumbed to some virus. So people start using apes as pets. They very quickly start breeding them to be slaves instead. And this is the situation we're in. The setting is an American city, an unnamed city, a very fascistic city that's shot like a... if you can contrast like something like, let's say, Back to the Future 2, where they go to the future and they extrapolate from our current future, and there's like tacky advertising everywhere, and just everything's garish and sort of overblown and disgusting, kind of idiocracy in this. And then there's another way there's many other ways to depict the future. So they're looking ahead from the 70s to the 90s, and it's really shot in a style that's like really reminiscent of the sci-fi movies from Europe in the 60s, like The 10th Victim, or is it The 7th Victim? I can't remember. The Marcello Mastroianni movie based on the Robert Sheckley book or short story. Or like the Godard films like Alphaville or that kind of thing. It's all shot on like very spare sets, like using the most ugly, like ultra-modern shopping mall type brutalist architecture. There's no advertising. They seem to have not much of a culture. The cops, it's a police state. There's two sets of cops. There's brown shirts and black shirts. The black shirts especially look very much like SS officers. All the men wear tuxedo instead of shirts and ties and blazers. They wear turtlenecks with blazers. So there's a very sort of severe aesthetic to the whole city. The city is run not by a mayor but by a governor. Their main interest seems to be enslaving and training apes. There's restaurants and things like that that apes work in. There's a lot of civil unrest. There's a early on scene of a protest where these waiters are protesting their job loss because people are just using unpaid slave labor of monkeys, of mostly gorillas and few orangutans, mostly gorillas and chimpanzees in this movie. So there's and the governor's clearly a totalitarian governor. So the movie's a little ahead on depicting totalitarian America because it's only set in 1991, but and it doesn't have any kind of consumerist topography that the real world has today. So it's quite interesting looking. It's very cool to look at. Another movie it's kind of reminds me of is The Monitors, which is a 60s sci-fi movie directed by, don't remember who it's directed by, but based on a Keith Roberts story, I think. So it's got that kind of aesthetic. It's very dark. All the chimpanzees are in green uniforms. All the gorillas are in red uniforms. They're not very good at their slave jobs. It's almost like, reminds me of AI. Obviously, if they were doing a movie like this today, it would be about robots. It's very much a killer robot movie where the robot slaves take over. But you could also look at it as AI because there's many instances of the gorillas and the chimpanzees having to be sent back to retraining because they do things like there's a chimpanzee waiter gets scared by the fire on a flaming dessert, whatever you call those flaming desserts, and starts freaking out in the restaurant. And it's like, they promised me he wouldn't. They were trained against fire and all this, And another orangutan is told to go pick a book off a shelf and picks off the wrong book. It's very much like AI. Like, you can tell it to do stuff. It might do it. It might do it wrong. Then you have to go check and do the work again. So they're kind of like walking AIs. They're not super intelligent. They're very intelligent compared to real apes, but they're evolving quickly. People are terrified of them getting too smart. They're terrified of them learning to read. They think it's kind of a matter of time. They're, of course, terrified that there's a talking ape. Still, the rumors persist that there's a talking ape somewhere. So this continues on continues on sort of naturally. If you look at the four movies up to this point, in the beginning, in the first movie, we're told there's a nuclear war that destroys mankind, and then the apes move in. And then in the second movie, we're told that there's a nuclear war, sort of continues that. In fact, there's a doomsday machine that can destroy the world completely, and there's also mutant humans that live underground. They're not really concerned with the apes very much. They just worship the bomb. So very much focused on the destructive impulses of human beings. The third movie continues with that destructive impulse of human beings. Also continues with the idea that that this is going to be a time loop, because as if if Cornelius and Zira hadn't come back and the baby Milo survived, then probably the apes would have never taken over. Maybe, we don't know, because people are doing pretty good on training the apes to become their new masters by giving over all their labor to them. Anyway, the nuclear war stuff isn't really touched on in this until the end. So, and there's three different endings, or there's two different endings. I was very surprised by that when I watched this movie recently, because the version you get now has the restored original ending, which is just as dark as the last two movie endings. The version I saw as a kid, though, was pulled back a bit, and I was able to find that on YouTube too, the original theatrical release ending. And now you can see the restored ending, which is much better and much more powerful, because the rejiggered ending that they used for theaters, they didn't reshoot anything because they were out of they had no money left, so they just ADR'd in new dialogue for Caesar, and they ADR, and they like reversed some footage so it looks like the apes are pulling their weapons away from smashing the governor's face in, which is what happens in the real ending. The novel coincides with the original ending that the filmmakers wanted. But a big difference in the ending I saw as a kid was that there's this ape called Lisa that we see pop up every once in a while that Cornelius is kind of sweet on. He's gradually building a revolution, and he sees her around town in different places. And at the end, when they have this big battle and the apes win, and there's a good human, I think his name's something, O'Brien. I shouldn't forget that, it's important. Who's kind of attaché to the mayor, who's kind of sympathetic to the apes, but still doesn't think that this violent overthrow of the city is really going to help them out. Mr. McDonald. McDonald is his name. He's trying to convince Caesar not to kill the governor, not to overthrow the city. He's telling him that it's not going to work out. Your revelation, this rebellion is going to be put down by the army coming in or whatever. And he says and Caesar agrees it probably will be put down, but there'll be other, and it's just sparking the light of revolution, and there'll be more revolutions. And he is about to give the order to kill the governor when this ape, in the version I saw, the first version, this ape, Lisa, says no. So she's the first natural ape, not a time traveler, to speak, and she asks Caesar not to do it. This is important for a couple reasons. But I guess it's not canon anymore, because they went back to it's not what they wanted to do. But anyway, it makes the ending of the movie much lighter than the others, because Caesar does decide not to execute the mayor. It also shows that the other apes are learning to speak, so this would have happened on some time frame, even if Caesar did not come from the future, because the apes are gradually learning by being domesticated. They're gradually gaining the powers that'll take them over, that'll allow them to take over the world anyway. And that would maybe make more sense for the timeline that Cornelius talked about in the last movie, where he said it's like 500 years. In 500 years, the apes start to talk, and they stand up, and they get their rights. Now we see it's happening much faster. So there's that change in that ending. Gives it a little more hopeful outlook that perhaps the apes and the humans will, or perhaps the apes will be more humane than the humans. When you put that against the ending that is now on the film now, which is now on the film, which is extremely dark. Caesar is completely commits to fighting the humans to the death, and he thinks they deserve it, and because of enslaving his people, which is fair. And there's an interesting sort of prolonged speech at the end of the book. The book is by John Jakes. I'll talk about that in a minute. At the end of the book, Caesar is arguing with MacDonald about the ability of the apes to take over the earth, and he says to MacDonald, "We're going to win. We're going to take over the earth, and it's because you're going to help us." Meaning the humans, meaning the violence of humans, meaning that they eventually will start a nuclear war. They'll fall apart on their own once their society starts to crumble, the human society, which you can see it's already crumbling because it's so repressive even to the humans. It's really a totalitarian society they're living in the early 90s. And that, with this ape rebellion, it's going to lead sooner or later to nuclear war between all the humans. And then we'll be back to what we found in the original film, Planet of the Apes. So, I thought it was all pretty cool, and it's very effective. And it is, again, the official cut, the original cut with the dark ending, where Caesar just lets the guerrillas go murder the governor, who's an evil man, who had tried to murder Caesar. Tried to electrocute him, but was not successful because MacDonald helped Caesar. And it's another dark ending. All of these movies end so dark, but you could see, and I know this is happening in the next movie too, because I remember that pretty well. You can see already the culture is changing. The culture of film is coming out of the 60s into the 70s. Where the producers and the audience really didn't want this bleak ending, so they were forced to change it to something with more hope, where Lisa begs Caesar to show mercy. It's worth seeing on YouTube. Maybe if I remember, I'll try and link to that, or I've seen it online, even though it's a pretty bad clip at the end because the sound cuts out partway through. But you can see how they're starting to say peaceful, merciful things back and forth, but the eye acting is clearly they still have murderous thoughts, and the new words don't fit the performances, because they figured, oh, they're apes, they don't. It's all ADR, after. It's all post recording anyway, but you can tell that it does not fit the acting that Roddy McDowall and the other apes were doing in that scene. But anyway, I was surprised to see online this was got mixed reviews. I thought it was great. I thought it was great when I was a kid. I thought it was great now. It's really a well-made 70s film. What else was I going to show you here on this? Oh, I guess I'll do it on here. So the book was written by John Jakes, which I discussed John Jakes quite a bit last week or so, for his character Brack the Barbarian. As a novel, it's not as great as he didn't do as great as the Jerry Pournelle Escape from the Planet of the Apes. It is readable, and that end is explained better in the book than in the movie, where they cut some of the dialogue, I think. It's worth a read. The movie is definitely worth seeing. It's just a cool dark SF movie from the 70s. One thing I noticed in these movies, they don't do a lot of after the first one. They did a lot of recapping in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, but they did a lot of recapping in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. In these others, they just give it like 2 lines. Apes came from the future, and they're afraid they're going to talk, and they fill it in quick and get right to the action. Like I said, 88 minutes. They really knew how to do it back then. They knew how to make a tight science fiction thriller. I don't know what people didn't like about it. I just heard that it was kind of... I think people were just getting tired of the franchise. A lot of people thought this would be the last one. A lot of people working on the series thought this would be the last one. The budget is getting smaller and smaller by each movie, although this one still looks incredible because of the reasons I mentioned, with the sets being limited to, like hyper futuristic looking, shopping blocks or civic buildings or whatever they found around LA. I assume plenty of places like that, but nothing that looks ordinary, and the really tight control on costume design. So I'd say give it a shot for sure. The book, probably not as important. Anyway, that's what I have to say about Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, because I really enjoyed it a lot. Next time, we'll talk about Battle, and if I remember to, I'll try and rank them. But I could probably do that now, unless Conquest really surprises me. But there we are for now, and look forward to Battle for the Planet of the Apes in a few days.